Saturn is lying to you. That perfect glowing gemstone you've admired your whole life has been hiding something NASA never expected to find. Something that, by every rule of physics, should not exist. In November 2024, the James Webb Space Telescope locked onto Saturn's North Pole for 10 straight hours. And what it captured made scientists stop and stare. Dark holes drifting through the planet's own aurora. A ghostly 6-armed star burning in the stratosphere, missing 2 of its arms, with no explanation for where they went. Now stack that next to a storm wider than Earth itself. Winds tearing past 310 miles an hour. Lightning that never stops firing. And a deep magnetic hum humanity only just learned how to hear. Suddenly Saturn does not look like a postcard anymore. It looks like a warning. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why. Before we get into what Webb actually saw, do me a favor and hit like and subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel keep digging up stories like this one. Now, let's find out what is really going on up there. Let's start with something you can actually hear. Because Saturn, despite floating in the total silence of space, has a voice. NASA recorded it using data from the Cassini spacecraft, translating the planet's radio emissions into a frequency range human ears can process. What comes out is a low, pulsing, almost mournful hum, and it is not artificial. It is real. Saturn's massive magnetic field acts like a natural antenna. When the solar wind slams into that magnetosphere near the poles, it generates powerful radio waves. Cassini sat there for years quietly recording it all. But here is where it gets strange. In 2022, researchers went back through that old Cassini data that had already been studied for years, and they noticed something buried inside it that nobody had flagged before. A signal that did not belong. Scientists now call it Saturn anomalous myriometric radiation, and unlike the planet's steady radio heartbeat, this new signal is chaotic. It does not follow the same rhythm. Imagine listening to a song you have heard 1,000 times, and suddenly a second melody fades in underneath it, playing in a completely different key. Nobody knows what generates it. Nobody knows why it only shows up sometimes. It is simply there, hidden in plain sight for over a decade before anyone noticed. And that silence around it matters more than you might think. Because if space could actually carry sound the way our atmosphere does, you would not be dealing with a faint hum from Saturn. You would be dealing with the sun. Physicist Craig DeForest ran the numbers on what our own star would sound like if sound could travel through the vacuum of space, and the result is something close to 100 decibels reaching Earth, non-stop. That is the equivalent of a motorcycle engine roaring at full throttle a few feet from your head. Except it never stops. And it is happening across every single square meter of our planet at once. The only reason you are not living inside that nightmare right now is the fact that space is empty. Silence is not the absence of danger here. It is the thing protecting us from it. Now let's go back to Saturn itself, because the hum is honestly one of its milder mysteries. At the planet's North Pole sits a shape that, according to basic physics, simply should not be able to hold together. It is called Saturn's hexagon, a 6-sided storm system more than twice the width of planet Earth, with a swirling vortex at its center and winds screaming around it at speeds up to 310 miles per hour. To put that in perspective, that is faster than the most violent tornadoes ever recorded on our planet, sustained continuously for decades. Atmospheric scientist Kevin Baines has called it one of the greatest ongoing mysteries in the solar system, and for good reason. Vortices in gas or liquid are supposed to be round. That is just how fluid dynamics works. Yet this storm has held a razor-sharp hexagonal shape since it was first spotted by Voyager 2 back in 1981. That is over 40 years of a gas giant's chaotic, churning atmosphere, somehow obeying strict geometry in one specific spot, and nowhere else in the entire solar system. Researchers have managed to recreate a similar hexagon effect in a lab, simply by spinning water at different speeds inside a container. That experiment explains how a shape like this can form. It does not explain why Saturn's version has remained so stable for so long, undisturbed by the raging turbulence surrounding it on every side. It is, quite literally, order refusing to collapse into chaos, on a planet where chaos should always win. And this is exactly where the story stopped making sense to scientists all over again. On November 29, 2024, an international team of 23 researchers pointed the James Webb Space Telescope directly at Saturn's polar region and watched for 10 uninterrupted hours as the planet rotated beneath it. Lead researcher Tom Stallard later admitted that the team expected to see broad, predictable bands of infrared emission. That is not what they got. Instead, roughly 1,100 kilometers above Saturn's clouds, tucked inside the glowing aurora itself, Webb detected a chain of strange dark patches. Scientists have started calling them dark beads, and they behave almost like small holes punched into the light. They held their position for hours, drifting only slightly, before eventually fading away. Nobody expected them. Nobody can currently explain them. Then, just below that layer, roughly 500 kilometers lower in Saturn's stratosphere, Webb picked up something even stranger. A massive structure shaped like a six-pointed star, stretching out from the North Pole toward the equator. Except only 4 of the 6 arms were actually visible, leaving the whole shape looking oddly lopsided, almost like it had been cut off mid-formation. Researchers noticed the arms appeared to roughly line up with the edges of the famous Hexagon storm raging far below in the lower atmosphere. But they still do not know if that connection is real or coincidental. In Stallard's own words, these features were completely unexpected and at present completely unexplained. That is not a throwaway line from a headline. That is the actual scientific conclusion, published by the team studying the data. 2 brand new atmospheric phenomena sitting hundreds of kilometers apart in altitude, potentially linked to each other, potentially linked to the hexagon, and currently unexplained by any existing model of how gas giant atmospheres are supposed to behave. So if the top of Saturn is throwing out mysteries scientists cannot solve, what about the part of the planet everyone actually recognizes, its rings? Here is something that might genuinely surprise you. Saturn is roughly 4.5 billion years old, but its rings are almost certainly not. In 2022, planetary scientist Jack Wisdom from MIT presented evidence suggesting the rings are shockingly young, likely forming somewhere between 100 and 200 million years ago. On a cosmic timescale, that places their creation around the same period dinosaurs were still walking on Earth. According to Wisdom's model, Saturn once had another large icy moon, nicknamed Chrysalis. For billions of years it orbited quietly, until the gravitational pull of Saturn's largest moon, Titan, gradually destabilized its orbit. Chrysalis drifted too close to Saturn, crossed into the planet's tidal forces, and was torn apart. Most of that shattered moon burned up into Saturn's atmosphere. But a small fraction, somewhere around 1% of its icy mass, remained in orbit and spread out into the flat, brilliant disk we now call the rings. Wisdom's model goes even further, suggesting that the violent destruction of Chrysalis may have physically knocked Saturn's axis into its current tilt of about 26.7 degrees. That detail is still being studied and debated, but it is a compelling explanation for 2 mysteries at once: why the rings look so young, and why Saturn leans the way it does. And what we see today may only be a fraction of what once existed. Researcher Yifei Jiao from the University of California Santa Cruz modeled the earliest stage of the ring's formation and found that they were originally far more massive and dense than they are now. Over millions of years, the gravity of Saturn's moons, Titan included, gradually stripped away as much as 70% of that original icy material, flinging it out into space and leaving behind the comparatively thin remnant we admire through telescopes today. From a distance, those rings look like a smooth, solid disk. Up close, they are anything but. They are made of trillions of individual chunks of water ice, constantly colliding and drifting in total darkness. Some pieces are as small as a grain of sand, others are the size of a car, or even larger, closer to the size of a mountain. And despite spanning roughly 175,000 miles across, the main ring system is astonishingly thin, averaging around 2 miles in thickness, and narrowing in some places to just over 30 feet. Cassini confirmed this during its final set of maneuvers when it threaded the narrow gap between Saturn's cloud tops and the inner edge of the rings, capturing images at a distance no spacecraft had ever attempted before. There is even a ring most people have never heard of. A faint, nearly invisible ring made of dust knocked off Saturn's distant moon Phoebe, stretching an almost unbelievable 7.5 million miles from the planet. If you wrapped a ring like that around Earth, its outer edge would sit roughly 5 times farther away than the moon's orbit. Now, the rings themselves change very little over time. Saturn's atmosphere is a different story entirely because roughly once every 30 years, the planet produces one of the most violent storms anywhere in the solar system, almost on a fixed schedule. In 2010, one of these giant storms began forming, and within just 3 weeks it had grown into a system roughly 11,000 miles wide, trailing a bright cloud pattern stretching around 62,000 miles, close to a third of Saturn's entire circumference. Earth could have fit comfortably inside it. Scientists noticed the storm appeared right as Saturn's northern hemisphere tilted most directly toward the Sun, suggesting these megastorms are tied to the planet's long seasonal cycle, which lasts almost exactly 30 Earth years per orbit. The mechanism behind it is almost like a slow burning fuse. After each storm, the atmosphere calms for years. Heat and water vapor quietly build up deep beneath the cloud layers, trapped there by a stable, colder upper atmosphere acting like a lid. Eventually, that trapped energy becomes too much, and it breaks through in a violent, explosive updraft, generating a storm system thousands of times more powerful than anything Earth produces. Inside these storms, Cassini's instruments recorded lightning striking at a rate of 10 times per second at peak intensity, punching dozens of miles down into the deep water clouds where the charge originates. Solar physicist George Fisher calculated that a single one of these storms releases roughly as much energy as Earth receives from the Sun over an entire year. And Saturn does not even need the Sun to stay this active. The planet radiates almost twice as much heat into space as it actually receives from sunlight, despite sitting nearly 1 billion miles away. Deep inside, under crushing pressure, liquid helium separates out from metallic hydrogen and slowly rains downward toward the core, a process that has been generating internal heat for billions of years through constant friction alone. Almost everything we know about these processes today, the storms, the rings, the hexagon, came from one spacecraft. Cassini spent 13 years studying Saturn up close. In 2017, with its fuel finally running out, NASA made the deliberate choice to send it directly into Saturn's atmosphere, rather than risk it eventually drifting into Enceladus or another moon that might be hiding a hidden ocean underneath its ice. One of the final images it sent back showed Enceladus quietly rising above Saturn's horizon. Moments later, the spacecraft began burning apart in the upper atmosphere until its signal finally cut out for good. So when you look at Saturn now, remember that what we actually understand about it is still incomplete. There is a signal in its radio emissions nobody can explain. A storm holding a shape it should not be able to hold. A star-shaped structure with 2 arms missing, discovered less than 2 years ago. And a planet that, despite everything we have learned, is still capable of surprising the most advanced telescope humanity has ever built. Saturn is not just beautiful, it is unfinished business. And somewhere up there, it is still keeping secrets we have not figured out how to ask about yet. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.